everyone. I'm Cheryl Barr, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to bring you someone I've admired online for a long time. And I want you to meet Elizabeth DiAlto. And say hi.
Hi.
Liz I've watched her evolution, I think since we were in B school together, and that was way back in 2010. So I've watched Liz evolve beautifully, and I always admired everything you did, your material, your websites, all of that. And I'm just so excited to talk to Liz today because she has evolved her work into what's known today as the Wild Soul movement. She's known for her raw, honest, grounded approach to self help and spirituality. And she's also just authored a fabulous book that I highly recommend. It's called Untame Yourself. And she's also the host of Untame the Wild Soul Women podcast, which I do watch as well. And she's been a teacher, a leader, a speaker, a coach, and a trainer to groups and individuals for 13 and a half years. And she also consults with organizations that range from startups to large corporations such as Dove UK. And boy, do we love Dove. They're all about authenticity, aren't they? Welcome. I'm just so happy to have you. And
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So great. Can you tell us, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and the evolution of how you got to be doing what you're doing today? And then we'll dive into that.
Yeah, it's so fun. I love answering this question, and I probably answer it different every time, depending on how I feel on the particular day and what feel like the important highlights. But I think the specific part of the evolution that you're referring to, when we met, I put that in quotes because I've never actually hugged you in real life.
No. Here we go.
Connected on the internet. Yay! Virtual squeeze. Oh, I live by this train. It's about to go through. We call it the train of truth. It's fine. It's just very loud.
That's fine. That we know that's what that is. It's cool.
It's coming through. So the evolution that you're referring to is I used to be a fitness professional, and I had this online fitness business. I was a personal trainer. And then at a certain point, I kind of shifted from working out to working in with women. And
that's a great phrase.
Right? And I didn't make it up. Years ago, I saw some like man in a YouTube video, and I'm like, oh, that's yes. But I can never remember the guy's name to give him credit. But anyway, I started to notice in my own self and with my clients that you could get all the physical results, but inevitably some like mental, emotional, or spiritual thing would come up and like sabotage everything. So I first went in and started doing that work on myself. And I reached a point where I literally just couldn't do fitness anymore. I didn't want to work out. It was so masculine and it was so forceful. And I was so tired after so many years. And because I didn't want to work out anymore, I didn't feel comfortable teaching working out. Not that I didn't believe in it, but it just, for me, it wasn't what I was doing. And I'm just not a person who could teach something I'm not practicing. So it was an interesting transition, but and I was nervous, right? Like all these people on my email list and in my products and programs had signed up for fitness advice, but I was steering away from that. However, I think one of the reasons why it worked and was a bit more seamless than I thought it might be was because I still kept my focus on the body. Only now, instead of all of the external stuff, it was about the internal stuff and engaging with the body from a sensual perspective, and sensual with an S, not an X, not sexual. Sensual meaning how can we tap into our senses and how can we learn to speak and navigate our body's unique language of the senses to connect with our inner wisdom and really get the truth and the information that so many of us are taught and conditioned to seek outside of ourselves from within.
I think what you're doing now is marrying the body and the mind together, because we can be inside, but if we're not paying attention to our body, which is really our truth teller in all respects, and this lies to us all the time, the ego. And we need to discern, pay attention to this, the higher self, intuitive. So I think it's a beautiful transition you've made. You say in your Untame Yourself in the book that you wished you'd had this book that you could have read several years ago when you began the process of awakening to who you really are. I love that word awakening because I think that's what we're all here to do is to be self-realized. Can you talk about developing a personal relationship with your own femininity? Because I think that there's a lot of confusion out there about that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a story of how I connected to that and really started to bridge the gap. I had received feedback for a number of years, actually, about being very masculine. And I had like some shame around it because I was just being myself. Like I didn't know any better. Like, and at the time, people were telling me to soften. I should be more feminine. But I didn't really have an understanding of what feminine was. I thought feminine was just prissy or girly, which I've never really been. And so I was a little bit lost. But then I got this book called Awakening Shakti by Sally Kempton.
I'm reading it right now.
Oh my God. The study of feminine archetypes is actually what helped me realize, we are all feminine, and like everything else, like all these different personality tests people love to take, we all have like a different expression of feminine. And while we do all have access to all the different archetypes within us, for some of us, the expression of certain ones come more naturally than others. So Awakening Shakti just kind of profiles these 9 Hindu goddesses as expressions of the feminine. And when I got to the Durga chapter, which is like that fierce, like warrior goddess, she has 8 arms, and each arm represents like a different aspect. I was like, I've always been feminine, but my feminine is like that fierce warrior energy. And then what's interesting, so that was very much, I had to accept and integrate that part of myself for the last number of years. And then what's funny, transitioning into 2016, I was very tired at the end of 2015, and I'm like, cool, I think I've integrated the warrior goddess. And this year I feel a lot more pulled to like that Gaia, that like earth mama, like energy. And that's what I'm really sinking into and soaking into. And so the feminine archetypes, whether it's looking at different types of goddesses. So for people who like to study these things, some great books, Awakening Shakti, Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's another book called Goddesses in Every Woman by Jean Shinoda Bolen. I haven't even finished that book. I never even finished Awakening Shakti either, to be quite honest. But I got it and I was like, it makes sense to me. So that really helped me because it was also like the energetics of being feminine, which can be, it's like receptive and nourishing. It's like the being instead of the doing, the wild and like all over the place, not linear versus like the very linear structure to the masculine. And in my process as well, one of the things that I realized as I swung the pendulum all the way over to feminine was that, hey, I need masculine too. Mm-hmm. So then it became a journey of integration, of marrying the two within myself. And it's really fun to play with how I can get the two to support each other in my life, in my business, in my relationships. It's like a never-ending journey, but to me it's just like super juicy and I never get bored of it.
In the book, you talk about the struggles that you see women go through and what they're experiencing. And it seems like what you create with your program is a very safe forum where you're all working on this. So what are some of the top things that you've seen from your women that they're really having struggles with?
Yeah. So the thing that's super present and up for me right now is a lot of women have been mothered by mothers who also were mothered by mothers and mothered by mothers. In this patriarchal culture where really the amazing gifts of the feminine have been like edited out and kind of conditioned out of like culture and society and religion and everything. And so many women are burned out and I don't just mean stressed out. Adrenal fatigue, diseases, issues, a lot of fatigue stuff. So it's physically wreaking havoc on the body. It's emotionally wreaking havoc on people and their relationships. So much resentment brewing because people, we've basically all been cultured to just be lovelier versions of men. And when we're not accessing an entire part of our nature, it's in there like scratching and clawing and screaming and doing everything to get our attention. And that's why these like illnesses manifest. I'm sure you've had this with clients too, Cheryl. Women all the time, it's like you've been to every doctor, no one can diagnose you, right? Is it adrenal fatigue? Is it this? Is it that? Getting all the tests, peeing in all the cups, like doing all the things. No one can tell you what's wrong with you because it's not a friggin' physical issue. It's denying a real deep part of your true nature. And so that's a big thing. So things like women being people pleasers or putting everyone else first, or not having boundaries, not knowing how to say no. These are all like symptoms of the ultimate thing, which is just not trusting or honoring yourself, not being connected to your body. So one of the things I talk about all the time is getting out of your head and into your body. If the head is running the show, it's a problem. The body is the filter for what's actually true that's going on up there. So it's really being disconnected from the body, not trusting ourselves, not loving and honoring ourselves, and really seeking, like giving other people all this power and authority to tell us what is right and good for us when really like no one could possibly know better than we can. So it's not an issue of having anything. One of the things I say is everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you. And I say it that way on purpose. People have asked me, why don't you say everything you need is inside of you? Because I want to emphasize that it's always been there. There's never been a moment when it wasn't there. So the issue isn't having what you need, it's accessing it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think you're so right. And it's about listening to the voice of that higher self. And discerning the ego and the inner critic and the one that's blasting us, and those are just old voices.
Yeah.
So I think that's really remarkable, and I see that too. And I think that now we're in this new consciousness here on Earth where we are beginning to really talk about this a lot more. So it looks like there's a real epidemic of I'm not good enough, and who do you think you are? But I think it's been there and just not talked about, because it was a shameful kind of thing. Those are shaming beliefs. What are some of the tips that you would share with your community around self-doubt and being afraid to show up? Because with the women I work with as well, we're afraid to use the voice, afraid to show up online. And so speak to me about, and our people about that, because I think the more that people know that everybody experiences this is not just, I think it's good to normalize it. That's what I want to say.
Yeah. Right. And everyone is unique. So they're going to have varying degrees of this like fear of visibility for whatever reason. And so for me right now, where my fear of visibility is around actually speaking to, the funny thing, I don't even know how I articulate it. I'm just going to say it this way, take it over and take it like, how mystical my nature really is.
Oh, I love it. Well, if people knew how mystical mine was, I'm like a mystic in disguise too.
Right? That's exactly right. And so it's like, do I have to still keep that in disguise? Do I have to continue like Trojan horsing that, where it's like people don't necessarily know until they get behind the curtain with me that like we're really operating from like energy and like the spiritual realm a lot more. And even all these things, the mindset, even the body, like all the energy and the spiritual stuff comes first. For women who are struggling with that, it's really important to identify where is the root of that thing. So an analogy I make all the time is anyone who has a garden or has ever had any kind of like garden or backyard knows you can mow the lawn and you can cut down the weeds, but they're just going to keep coming back unless you pull them out by the roots.
That's a great analogy.
So a lot of our issues, we're mowing down the weeds. We're not pulling them out by the roots because we're slapping Band-Aids on them instead of clearing it out and healing it. And so one of the most, incredible practices is forgiveness. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But forgiveness is just the way to like take your power back from all those things that you've given it to. Whether it was someone telling you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't do that, don't talk about that, or nice girls don't do this, or don't be too much, or, wherever the voice is, wherever it came from, we need to clear the energy around that because it's constantly at play. So really getting to the roots of things and clearing out the energy before we even move forward into, okay, what's my mindset? what do I feel in my body, dealing with being like nervous and vulnerable and all that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we're learning, but we're learning deeply about chakras in Kundalini, and it's all about energy. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's bringing in what I know about the mind, which is very much what they talk about in Kundalini, but also the chakras. So I'm fascinated. You do work with chakras? Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't necessarily specifically speak to it as much as I used to because I studied Reiki for a while. Okay. But, I interviewed, do you know who Sonia Choquette is?
Yes.
I interviewed Sonia for the podcast last year. And one of the things she said that I loved is she said the throat is the chimney to the heart.
Oh, I love that.
And a lot of women do notice, right? Physical pain and sensations in the neck and shoulder area when they're not speaking their truth, when they're not using their voice, when they're not speaking up, or they might have thyroid issues or things that are all kind of centered around this area. So that's what I love the simple reference of the chakras for, to look at my body and go, what's going on in my body right now? Okay, well, if that's in my solar plexus, where am I struggling with my personal power right now? It's just super interesting to look at how the physical relates to the energetic in everything.
It is fascinating. I see a lot of throat chakra. So what do you see, what do you hope to see in the future, with women? What would a new world look like for us as women compared to what we're dealing with, like crabs in the pot, if somebody's being successful and bring them down? That's the old model. What's your view? I'd love to hear yours.
So this is amazing that on this day, I don't know when this interview is going to air, but on this day that you're asking me this question, 1 hour ago, I just pulled it up. Here's what I just wrote. I'm just going to read you my Facebook post that I just wrote.
Okay, good.
Feel Good Friday Love Bomb. To all my soul sisters, divine feminine leaders, sacred womb temple creators, priestesses, witches, crones, manifestors, magical unicorn fairies, fire starters, masters of the universe, mermaid princesses, rebels with the cause, and whatever else we're calling ourselves these days. Not that names, titles, or labels actually mean anything or matter. It feels like everywhere I look lately, feminine revolutions, courses, programs, circles, and women's movements are sprouting and growing. I know these things aren't new and have been happening for centuries thanks to the internet. They're much more visible and accessible now. There's a lot of similar language, themes, images, quotes, mantras, affirmations, prayers, layouts, designs, and vibes going around, and this is good news. So I'll pause to say, this is my view. This is good news, right? This is our proof that it's working. We, all of us, are collectively making a difference. Mm-hmm. The beautiful nature of the feminine is collaborative, not competitive.
That's right on, sister. I'm right there with you because I talk to my women and say, we're here to support each other. And none of this negative energy. And the energy never comes in. It's very sacred in that respect.
Yeah, and that's funny. I don't get that in my communities either. Yeah, I just don't because that's not the space I hold, and that's not the energy that I go into the world with. So basically, like, there's a whole rest of the post. You can find it if you want to. But the whole point was this.
I'll link it if I can link it to that.
Oh, cool. I'll send you the link after. Nothing is ours anyway, right? Like, we really are one big team. And like my way of doing things resonates with some people. Your way resonates with some people. Thank God there's so many of us doing this work so that the message can spread and the energy on the planet can shift. Mm-hmm. So like my big goal, my big vision, and this is funny, I was at a conference last week, they called this the moon shot, like shooting for the moon, is just really a world where like the feminine divine is just as honored and included and considered as the masculine divine. And also the two are integrated. Yeah. Because if that was the case on the planet, like energetically, so many of the issues that we have as a global culture would literally just fall away because it couldn't exist in that state. So it's a big one. I don't know that I'll live to see it, but we're making so much progress.
Mm-hmm. We are, and I love everything you said. I see a world where we support each other to be the best versions of ourselves and that we're not tearing each other down. And I think that is the old world, because if that's your view, you're going to run with people that support that and support you. Anything else you want to add about Wild Soul Movement? I also want you to share how people can access your program and especially your new book, Untame Yourself.
Oh, cool. So the tagline for the book is reconnect to the lost art, power, and freedom of being a woman. And it's actually surprising. It's a pretty short book, but the range of topics covered in the book goes from like body, mind, soul connection to transparent communication and courageous conversations. It's just like this whole breadth of like, and it's very, I tried to make it as useful as possible. And I'm getting amazing reviews, so I'm super, super grateful for that. And it's basically just like a download of the processes that I've gone through and that I've been using with my clients for years and continue to use. The Wild Soul Movement program, this was the big shift for me out of fit. Like Wild Soul Movement was the vehicle I rode from being a fitness professional into doing what I do now, because I had this idea to create a practice that combines movement, but like sensual, slow movement, not for the sake of burning calories or exercise, but for the pure sake of connecting to the body and like feeling and like cultivating a new relationship to inhabiting your female body with mantras and meditation.
Ooh, beautiful.
And so basically the movement is kind of an expression of the word. So for example, there's the virtual program, there's 12 weeks to it, there's 12 videos, and it goes in order. There's 4 topics that build into each other. The first one is surrender and release. So kind of what we were talking about earlier, you got to clear the stuff out first before we can put anything new in, right? Then it's trust and receiving, because as women, we really honor ourselves on being amazing givers, and we overgive. So to get a little more balanced in the giving and receiving, and the trust that that's okay, and the trust that life wants to support us, because we live in this very independent age of like being like, I'll do it myself, and we're killing ourselves trying to do it ourselves. It's not in our nature to do everything ourselves. Then we do Wild Dreaming and Desire. And so basically in each section, there's 3 videos with the movement practice, and the mantra supports the topic. So in Wild Dreaming and Desire, for example, one of the mantras is, I am worthy of wild success.
Oh, I love that.
And it's funny. So when I created this, I'm like, all right, I'm going to combine these things and see how it goes. And the things that come up for people, the way people will resist it, but then like, there's a journal that supports it too. So there's all these like support questions, and people are like, oh my God, it's just like, is mind blowing to me constantly. This thing I created, which we all know, like the idea drops in and we're just like, okay, I'll take that one and run with it, right? So it's not mine anyway. The things it does for people, it's just unbelievable and ridiculous. And then the last topic is creation and inner wisdom. And the last mantra of the entire program is, I'm a powerful creator. So it's really about coming to this deep place of just like love, trust, acceptance, and really owning the fullness and embracing that fullness of our personal power, which is always evolving too, right? It really, Wild Soul Movement is the right name for it, because it's wild, the things that women get out of it and the experiences that like we all continue to have. So it's been out in the world for like 2 years now.
It's just such a thrill to talk to you about this. This is something I spend a lot of time pondering and reading about, and I just wanted to share your movement with my audiences too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the more we can spread this message, the sooner we can all tap into it. So thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you.
So people can reach you at Wild Soul Movement.
It's Wild Soul Movement goes to, it's untameyourself.com now, but it all goes to the same place. If you want to check out the program, it's at untameyourself.com/join-us.
Okay.
And if you want to get the book, which is currently still only available in Kindle, the print version will be out around May this year, 2016. But you can get the Kindle version of the book at untameyourself.com/Amazon. That'll take you right to the page.